past far more advanced and tragically lost. This is a journey into those cracks in our official history. We will follow a trail of evidence that has been left in the shadows, pursuing questions that have been deemed too disruptive to ask. We will travel the globe, from the highlands of the Andes to the submerged coastlines of Japan, to examine these enigmatic artifacts and structures for ourselves. We will weigh the orthodox explanations against the unsettling anomalies they fail to address. This is not a search for myth or legend. It is a forensic investigation into a past we barely know. A past that may hold the key to understanding our own origins and perhaps our own future. Our journey begins not on land, but in the deep, with a discovery pulled from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck. A discovery so complex, so far beyond its time, that it forces us to ask a simple yet profound question. Who were our ancestors, really? Chapter 2: The Clockwork of the Gods. The year is 1901. Off the jagged coast of the Greek island of Antikythera, a team of sponge divers is working the deep. They are men of the sea, accustomed to its moods and its treasures. But on this day, they find something that will forever change our understanding of the ancient world. At a depth of 45 meters, they discover a shipwreck, its timbers rotted away by 2,000 years beneath the waves. It is a Roman-era cargo vessel, its contents scattered across the seafloor like the discarded relics of a forgotten age. Slowly, carefully, they begin to bring its treasures to the surface. Magnificent bronze and marble statues, elegant glassware, ornate pottery. These are the expected artifacts of antiquity, beautiful and valuable, but they fit nicely within our established history. And then they find something else. An unassuming, calcified, greenish, corroded bronze, so misshapen by its time in the sea that it is at first mistaken for a rock. It is brought to the National Archaeological Museum in Athens and for a time largely ignored. Cycle. Even the 4-year cycle of the Pan-Hellenic Games, including the Olympics. It was, by all accounts, a masterpiece of ancient Greek astronomy and engineering, a testament to the genius of minds like Archimedes or Hipparchus. A remarkable achievement, yes, but one that is ultimately placed within the box of known human capabilities. But the deeper modern scientists looked, the more impossible the device became. In the early 21st century, teams using cutting-edge surface imaging and high-resolution X-ray tomography were able to reconstruct the device in stunning digital detail. They uncovered secrets that had been locked away for 2 millennia. And with each discovery, the chasm between this object and the world that supposedly created it grew wider. The full mechanism contained over 30 distinct hand-cut bronze gears, arranged in a gearbox of breathtaking complexity. The teeth on these gears were tiny, uniform, equilateral triangles, cut with a precision that borders on the miraculous for an era of hand tools. The entire device was housed in a wooden box no bigger than a modern laptop, with inscriptions on its bronze faces acting as a user's manual. This level of miniaturization, this compact elegance, is simply not seen again until the great astronomical clocks of 14th century Europe. The Antikythera mechanism predates them by 1,500 years. And inside its clockwork heart lies its greatest secret. The researchers discovered that the Greeks had used a system known as epicycle gearing, a set of gears riding on other gears to accurately model a subtle variation in the Moon's orbit. This phenomenon, known as the Moon's first anomaly, was not formally described until Kepler's laws over 1,700 years later. To model it mechanically requires a differential gear, a device so advanced it was thought to have been invented in the 16th century to build the first great clocks. Yet here it was, ticking away in a Greek shipwreck.
A computer from 150 BCE. This single feature shatters our timeline of mechanical engineering. It presents us with a stark, undeniable anomaly. Where are the prototypes? Where are the simpler machines that must have preceded it? The archaeological record is completely silent. The Antikythera mechanism doesn't appear at the end of a long evolutionary chain of development. It appears fully formed, perfect, as if it dropped into history from another time. The lack of any precedent has forced us to ask a more profound question. Is the device truly a product of known Greek science, or is it the last surviving relic of a completely different tradition? A tradition of advanced mechanical knowledge that has been almost entirely erased from our history. The mainstream view suggests a lone genius, perhaps Archimedes himself, designed and built the device. But even a genius cannot create in a vacuum. A machine like this requires more than a brilliant mind. It requires an infrastructure of knowledge. It needs master machinists capable of cutting precision gears, metallurgists who can create the perfect bronze alloys, and a deep well of astronomical data collected over centuries. This device is not the work of one man. It is the product of a legacy of which we have no other trace. This alternative theory suggests that we are not looking at an anomaly, but at the single surviving piece of evidence of a lost technological peak. It implies that the ancient world was not a primitive place of simple tools, but a world that contained pockets of extraordinary technical sophistication, a sophistication that was, for some reason, lost. It didn't evolve into something greater, it simply vanished. The Antikythera mechanism is therefore more than just an ancient calculator. It is physical, tangible proof that the history of technology is not a straight upward line. It is a story of peaks and valleys, of incredible heights achieved and catastrophic knowledge lost. It is a ghost in the machine of history, a silent testament to a forgotten epoch of scientific understanding.
It single-handedly proves that at least one ancient culture possessed a level of mechanical and astronomical knowledge that was then utterly lost to humanity, not to be rediscovered for over 15 centuries. It forces us to re-evaluate everything we think we know about the past. If this one delicate mechanical marvel could survive by pure chance at the bottom of the sea, it begs the question, what else haven't we found? What other wonders made of less durable materials have vanished completely? And what about wonders made not of bronze and wood, but of stone?
The clockwork of the gods reveals a lost world of intricate, microscopic precision. It shows us that our ancestors had mastered the science of the small, the complex, the mechanical. But what happens when this same level of impossible precision isn't found in a handheld device, but in stones weighing over 100 tons? What happens when the mystery moves from the gears of a forgotten science to the very bedrock of a mountain top, where an entire city seems to have been engineered by a lost race of giants? To find out, we must leave the depths of the Aegean Sea and travel high into the Andes Mountains to a desolate, wind-swept plateau that holds a puzzle of stone that may be even older and far more profound. Chapter 3: The Impossible City of Puma Punku. We leave the cold depths of the Aegean Sea and the intricate clockwork of a forgotten Greek science to travel halfway across the world. Our destination is a place of thin air and piercing light, the Altiplano of Bolivia. Here, nearly 13,000 feet above sea level, the sky is a brilliant, unforgiving blue. The wind is relentless. This is one of the harshest environments on Earth, a place where life clings to a precarious existence. It is a landscape that seems suited only for the hardiest souls, a place where the construction of a simple hut would be a monumental achievement. And yet, it is here, on this desolate, wind-swept plateau, that we find the ruins of a city that should not exist. Sprawled across the barren ground is a scene of utter devastation. It looks not like a city that has gently crumbled over time, but one that was torn apart by a cataclysm of unimaginable force. Massive, precision-cut stones lie shattered and scattered like the components of a giant's broken machine. This is Puma Punku, the doorway of the Puma. At first glance, the sight is chaotic, but as your eyes adjust, a sense of profound disbelief begins to set in. It's not the scale of the ruins that first captures your imagination, but the nature of the stones themselves. You see enormous platforms of red sandstone, and then the gray andesite and diorite. They are cut with such razor-sharp edges, such perfectly flat surfaces, and such complex geometric forms that they seem alien to this primitive landscape. Most iconic are the famous H-blocks, multi-ton pieces of solid stone carved into a complex, standardized shape. They look less like the product of a Stone Age culture and more like precision-molded, interlocking components fresh from a factory floor.
The official story of Puma Punku, as told by mainstream archaeology, is that it is a remarkable ceremonial complex belonging to the Tiwanaku Empire, a powerful pre-Incan civilization that dominated the southern Andes. The site is dated to approximately 500 to 600 AD. According to the established narrative, the Tiwanaku people were a formidable culture, but one that existed firmly within the confines of the Stone Age. They had no written language, they had not developed the wheel for transportation, and their metallurgical skills were largely limited to simple, soft bronze.
Therefore, the construction of this incredible site is attributed to the most basic of tools and techniques. The orthodox explanation posits that legions of laborers, using heavy stone hammers or mauls, slowly pounded these blocks into shape. For finer work, they would have used primitive bronze chisels. To achieve the smooth, flat surfaces, they would have spent countless hours grinding them down with sand and water. The massive stones themselves, some weighing over 100 tons, were said to have been quarried miles away and transported to the site using log rollers, rope, and the sheer brute force of thousands of men. From this perspective, Puma Punku is presented as the ultimate testament to human ingenuity and devotion. A megalithic wonder built through patience, perseverance, and the sweat of a civilization at the very peak of its Stone Age capabilities. It is an impressive story, but it is a story that completely falls apart under even the slightest scrutiny. The moment we stop looking at Puma Punku as a temple and start looking at it as an engineering project, the official narrative becomes not just questionable, but impossible. The problems are so profound, they challenge the very foundations of our understanding of the ancient past. The first issue is the material itself. The most intricate carvings at Puma Punku are not done in soft sandstone, but in gray andesite and diorite. On the Mohs scale of mineral hardness, these stones are a 6 and a 7 respectively. They are incredibly dense, tough, volcanic rock. The bronze chisels supposedly used by the Tiwanaku have a hardness of around 3.5. It is a simple law of physics that a softer material cannot be used to cut a harder one. A bronze chisel would be as useless as a butter knife against a steel anvil. The stone hammers would have been just as ineffective for creating fine details, likely shattering upon impact. So the most basic question, what tools were they actually using? Even if we ignore the tool marks, the precision of the work is what truly defies explanation. We are not talking about stones that are roughly shaped. We are talking about surfaces that are flat to within fractions of a millimeter over several feet. We are talking about right angles that are a true, perfect 90 degrees. Engineers who have studied the site have confirmed that the level of precision on display is something that would be challenging to replicate today, even with our modern diamond-tipped power tools and laser-guided saws. To suggest this was achieved by hitting rocks with other rocks is frankly absurd. Then there are the cuts themselves. The stones are riddled with features that scream of advanced machining. We find perfectly straight grooves, some only millimeters wide, that run for several feet while maintaining a completely uniform depth and width. We find complex interior corners cut at sharp angles that are physically impossible to create with hand tools.
Most baffling of all are the numerous, perfectly circular drill holes. Some of these holes perforate the entire thickness of the incredibly hard andesite blocks. What kind of primitive drill, made of what unknown material, could accomplish such a feat?
And finally, there are the H-blocks. These stones, weighing several tons each, are not just roughly the same shape. They are virtually identical, with dozens of complex angles and interior cuts. They appear to be standardized, mass-produced, interlocking components. The level of planning and execution required to make even two multi-ton blocks fit together seamlessly is immense. To make dozens of them from a single complex template using only primitive tools is beyond the realm of possibility. The evidence on the ground does not whisper of a lost technology. It screams it. If stone pounders and bronze chisels are not the answer, then we are forced to look for alternative theories, no matter how unconventional they may seem. The stones themselves tell a story of a technology so advanced it has been lost to our historical memory. The machine-like precision, the impossible cuts, and the perfect drill holes have led engineers and independent researchers to a stunning conclusion. The builders of Puma Punku must have possessed some form of high technology. This doesn't necessarily mean extraterrestrial intervention. It points towards a lost chapter of human capability. The evidence is consistent with the use of tools we would recognize today: high-speed saws, precision grinders, and advanced drills. The perfect uniformity of the H-blocks has led some to suggest they weren't carved at all, but were perhaps cast in molds, using a lost formula for creating a type of advanced concrete or geopolymer from liquefied stone. This controversial theory, while dismissed by mainstream archaeology, would neatly explain the lack of tool marks and the incredible uniformity of the finished components. Other, more speculative theories, often drawn from local legends, speak of a technology that could soften stone, perhaps using sound, frequency, or some other unknown energy source, allowing it to be molded like clay before being re-hardened. While this lies on the fringe of science, it is an attempt to explain evidence that currently has no other rational explanation. Whatever the specific method, the conclusion is the same. The builders of Puma Punku were not a Stone Age people. They were masters of a lost science of engineering. Puma Punku does not exist in a vacuum. Its mystery resonates with the enigma of the Antikythera mechanism. One demonstrates an impossible mastery of microscopic precision in metal. The other, an impossible mastery of macroscopic precision in stone. There are two distinct data points that point to the same unsettling truth. Our ancestors possessed pockets of technological knowledge that were not supposed to exist. Knowledge that was somehow lost, leading to a global amnesia that lasted for millennia. Many researchers believe that the Tiwanaku culture did not build Puma Punku, but merely found it. They built their own city around these incomprehensible ruins, recognizing them as the work of a godlike predecessor race. The true builders, whose name is lost to time, may have been part of a global seafaring civilization, a civilization whose architectural signature, this precise, interlocking polygonal stonework, can be found in other enigmatic sites across the planet, from Peru
to Egypt. Puma Punku may be the most shocking, but it is not the only piece of the puzzle. The shattered city of Puma Punku leaves us standing before the wreckage of our own historical certainties. It presents a level of craftsmanship and engineering that the official narrative cannot even begin to explain. The evidence, carved into immutable, impossibly hard stone, tells us that a culture with a profound and advanced understanding of technology was present in the Andes thousands of years ago. It forces us to confront the reality of a lost technology capable of shaping the very bones of the earth with machine-like precision. But here, on the roof of the world, the question of scale remains. The largest monoliths at Puma Punku weigh over 130 tons, a truly monumental achievement in logistics. But what if this was not the limit? What if, on the other side of the world, we could find stones that make these look small? Stones nearly 10 times heavier, quarried and moved with the same inexplicable ease.
The official historical and archaeological record attributes the entire complex at Baalbek, including this gargantuan foundation, to the Romans. The story begins in the 1st century AD, when Emperor Augustus set out to build the largest and most magnificent temple in the entire Roman Empire, dedicated to Jupiter. It was a project of immense scale and ambition, taking over 2 centuries to complete. The orthodox view is that Roman engineers, renowned for their mastery of construction, were responsible for quarrying, transporting, and lifting every single stone at the site. We know they were brilliant engineers. They gave us the Colosseum, the Pantheon, and a network of aqueducts and roads that defined an empire. The argument is that for this, their grandest of all projects, they simply scaled up their known techniques. Using an army of laborers and complex systems of capstans, levers, and wooden cranes, they undertook the most ambitious construction project of their time. From this perspective, the Trilithon is not a mystery, but a statement. It is the ultimate expression of Roman power, a demonstration that for the empire, nothing was impossible. It is presented as the absolute zenith of their engineering capabilities, a feat of brute force and ingenuity that stands as a testament to the might of Rome. It is a simple, straightforward explanation for a truly colossal undertaking. But this simple explanation begins to crumble under the weight of the evidence itself. The moment we look past the Roman temples and focus on the megalithic foundation they sit upon, profound and deeply uncomfortable questions emerge. The first and most obvious is, why? Why would the Romans, the masters of practical, efficient engineering, choose to build a foundation in such an impossibly difficult manner?
They could have achieved the same structural stability with hundreds of smaller, more manageable blocks, as they did at every other major temple site in their vast empire. The Trilithon isn't just grand. It's an act of such absurd over-engineering that it borders on the insane. And then there is the sheer, mind-numbing scale. Let's be clear about what we are looking at. Each of the 3 monoliths in the Trilithon is approximately 64 feet long, 14 feet high, and 12 feet wide. Their weight is estimated to be between 800 and 1,000 tons each. A modern M1 Abrams tank weighs 68 tons. We are talking about single blocks of stone that weigh more than a dozen battle tanks combined. Today, in the 21st century, only a handful of our largest, most specialized mobile cranes could even attempt to lift such a weight. And it would be a precarious, incredibly difficult operation. The impossibility of this feat is amplified when we journey less than a mile away to the ancient quarry. There, lying tilted in the earth, is the legendary Hajar al-Hibla, the stone of the pregnant woman. It is a single, quarried monolith, larger than any of the stones in the Trilithon, estimated to weigh an astonishing 1,200 tons. And just a few years ago, right beside it, archaeologists discovered another, even larger block, still partially buried. Its weight is calculated to be
a staggering 1,650 tons. These are, by a huge margin, the largest worked stones on the face of the planet. This presents a fatal flaw in the official narrative. The Romans were meticulous record keepers. They wrote with pride about their great engineering achievements. Yet, in the entire corpus of Roman literature, there is not a single mention of the quarrying, transportation, or lifting of these stones at Baalbek. This would have been, without exaggeration, the single greatest engineering feat of the ancient world, dwarfing the construction of the pyramids. And yet, it is met with absolute, deafening silence. The most advanced calculations of what Roman cranes could lift, even when yoked together, max out at around 100 tons for a complex lift. How do you get from 100-ton capacity to lifting and precisely placing a 1,000-ton block more than 20 feet in the air? The known Roman toolkit is simply not capable of this work. If the Romans did not possess the technology to move these stones, then we are forced to conclude that they did not move them. The most logical and compelling alternative theory is that the Romans did not build the great platform at all. They found it. They arrived at Baalbek and discovered a vast ancient stone terrace built by a mysterious predecessor civilization and considered sacred for millennia. Recognizing the magnificence of this ready-made foundation, they simply built their own temple on top of it, incorporating the older, far grander structure into their own design. This theory elegantly explains the jarring stylistic difference between the precise, almost brutalist megalithic podium and the ornate classical Roman architecture above it. It also explains the complete lack of Roman records detailing its construction. They didn't write about it,
because they didn't do it. But this, of course, raises an even more profound question. If not the Romans, then who?
Local Arab legends attribute the founding of Baalbek to Cain after he was cast out by God, or to a race of giants under the command of King Nimrod. They speak of a time when the stones were moved with the help of the gods, or by a magical science. While these are myths, they may be a cultural memory of a time when a technology existed that was so powerful it appeared to be magic to later peoples. A technology that could quarry and manipulate multi-thousand-ton blocks of stone as if they were weightless. The enigma of Baalbek connects directly to the puzzle of Puma Punku. They are chapters in the same lost story. At Puma Punku, we witnessed an impossible level of precision on an inhuman scale. Here at Baalbek, we witness an impossible scale achieved with inhuman power. The two sites, separated by thousands of miles and an ocean, seem to bear the signature of the same lost science of megalithic construction. We may be looking at the fingerprints of a single, globe-spanning prehistoric civilization, a culture that had mastered the science of stone to a degree we are only just beginning to comprehend. Their calling card is these impossibly large, precisely fitted stone blocks which form the foundations of so many sacred sites around the world. We see later famous cultures, the Romans, the Incas, the ancient Egyptians, building on top of these older, more mysterious structures. We have been so dazzled by the history we know, we have failed to see the deeper, older history lying just beneath its surface. The Terrace of the Giants leaves us with a stark contradiction, a foundation of impossible weight attributed to a culture that left no record of the feat and possessed no known technology to achieve it. Baalbek is more than a ruin. It is a profound architectural and engineering question that challenges the very timeline of human capability. The 1,000-ton stones are a silent, immovable refutation of our accepted history. The entire mystery of Baalbek hinges on the question of its age. Is the foundation Roman, or is it a remnant from a far older, forgotten world? This question of challenging an established timeline, of peeling back the layers of history to find something more ancient and mysterious beneath, is a powerful key. But what if this same key could unlock the secrets of one of the most famous, most iconic monuments on the entire planet? What if we could find evidence, not in engineering, but in geology, to suggest that the great Sphinx of Egypt is not 4,500 years old, but more than double that, a silent witness from a time before the sands, before the pharaohs, and before the dawn of our known history? The immense 1,000-ton stones of Baalbek force us to confront a history written on an impossible scale, suggesting that the great works of antiquity may be far older than our textbooks tell us. This unsettling idea of a deeper,
forgotten timeline hidden beneath the one we know, now takes us to the most iconic and enigmatic location on Earth. We travel south across the Mediterranean to the arid plateau of Giza in Egypt. Here, under the unrelenting gaze of the sun, half buried in sand, lies a creature of stone and silence. It is the Great Sphinx, the guardian of the pyramids, the keeper of secrets, the ultimate riddle in stone. For millennia, it has watched the rise and fall of dynasties, empires, and entire civilizations. Its scale is breathtaking, as long as a city block, as tall as a 6-story building, carved from a single monolithic outcrop of limestone. It is a chimera, a fusion of lion and man, power and wisdom. Its eyes, though damaged by time, seem to gaze past our world and into eternity. It is perhaps the most recognizable, most studied, and most mysterious monument ever created by human hands. We think we know its story, but the stone from which it is carved tells a different tale. A tale that could shatter the very foundations of ancient history. The accepted, mainstream story of the Sphinx is the one found in every encyclopedia and taught in every university. It is the story told by Orthodox Egyptology. In this narrative, the Great Sphinx was carved around 2500 BC during the 4th dynasty of Egypt's Old Kingdom. It is attributed to the pharaoh Khafre, the builder of the second Great Pyramid, which stands directly behind it. The evidence for this attribution is circumstantial, but has long been considered conclusive by the academic establishment. Firstly, the face of the Sphinx, though heavily eroded, is said to bear a striking resemblance to other known statues of Khafre. Secondly, the Sphinx sits directly adjacent to the limestone causeway that connects Khafre's Valley Temple to his mortuary temple, which in turn lies before his pyramid. The implication is that the Sphinx was not a standalone monument, but an integral, symbolic part of Khafre's vast funeral complex. Furthermore, a black diorite statue of Khafre was discovered buried upside down in the Valley Temple, strengthening the link between the pharaoh and the surrounding structures. While it is a crucial and often overlooked fact that there are no Old Kingdom inscriptions, not a single one, that mention Khafre building the Sphinx, or even name the monument at all, the contextual evidence has been deemed sufficient. The Sphinx, therefore, has been assigned its place in the timeline. It is a 4,500-year-old masterpiece of pharaonic Egypt, a symbol of the power and divine authority of a great king. But a monument of this scale is not just a work of art, it is a work of geology. And in the late 20th century, this simple fact would lead to a revolutionary challenge to the established timeline. The anomaly was first noted by the independent researcher R.A. Schwaller-de Lubitsch, and later championed by the author John Anthony West. West argued that the Sphinx and its surrounding enclosure walls displayed a type of erosion that looked completely different from other structures on the Giza Plateau. To test this hypothesis, he brought in a credentialed scientist, Dr. Robert Schoch, a tenured professor of geology at Boston University. Schoch arrived in Egypt with no agenda other than to conduct a geological analysis. He was not an Egyptologist or an alternative historian. He was a rock expert. And what he saw from his very first visit shocked him. The science is straightforward. In a hyper-arid, sandy environment like Giza has been for the last 5,000 years, the primary agent of erosion is wind. Wind-driven sand is a powerful abrasive, which blasts away softer layers of rock, leaving harder layers protruding. It creates a distinct profile of sharp, horizontal, undulating bands. This classic wind and sand erosion is visible all over the Giza Plateau, on the tombs, and even on the pyramids themselves. But when Schoch examined the body of the Sphinx, and more importantly, the deep limestone walls of the enclosure from which it was carved, he saw a completely different story. The weathering pattern here was not sharp and horizontal. It was soft, rounded, and dominated by deep vertical fissures. It was a rolling, scalloped profile. To a geologist, this pattern is unmistakable. It is a textbook, classic example of precipitation-based erosion, the kind of weathering caused by thousands of years of heavy rainfall running down a rock face. The Sphinx and its enclosure walls look like they have been rained on for a very, very long time. The surrounding Old Kingdom tombs, which are supposedly of the same age and are cut from the very same limestone bedrock, show only the sharp, crisp patterns of wind erosion. The geological evidence is stark and clear. The Sphinx and its enclosure were weathered by a different force from a different climatic era than the other 4,500-year-old structures on the plateau. The stones themselves are telling us they do not share the same history. This single geological observation carries with it a conclusion so profound it threatens to rewrite history. For the Sphinx to be so heavily weathered by rain, it must have existed in an era when Egypt received significant, prolonged rainfall. We know from paleoclimatology when that was. The Sahara Desert was not always a desert. The period before roughly 3000 BC is known as the Neolithic subpluvial, or the Green Sahara period. It was an era of savannas and regular rainfall, a climate completely different from the one that exists today. This wet period ended thousands of years before the reign of Khafre. Dr. Schoch's conclusion was therefore as logical as it was explosive. For the Sphinx to bear the scars of this ancient rain, it must have been carved before the climate changed. It must have been carved during or before the Green Sahara period. Based on the depth of the weathering, he conservatively estimated that the Sphinx must date to at least 5,000 to 7,000 BC, with a more likely origin of 10,000 BC, or even earlier. This would make the Sphinx more than twice the age of the pyramids it guards. It would mean that this iconic monument is not a product of pharaonic civilization, but a relic from a much older, lost chapter of human history. This theory also elegantly explains another long-standing anomaly: the Sphinx's disproportionately small head. If the monument is far older than the 4th dynasty,
It's likely it was not originally a pharaoh. It was probably a full-bodied lion, a sacred symbol of an ancient age. Thousands of years later, when the pharaohs came to power, they would have found this ancient, heavily weathered monument. A pharaoh, perhaps Khafre, then simply recarved the time-worn lion head into his own likeness. This act of appropriation would explain why the head appears to be from the dynastic era, why it is too small for the body, and why it shows far less erosion than the torso. The pharaohs did not build the Sphinx. They inherited it, and they put their own face on a far more ancient mystery.
Chapter 6: Echoes of Ancient Power. The Great Sphinx, with its ancient, water-worn gaze, may be the ultimate proof of a lost civilization from the mists of deep time. Its sheer scale, its impossible age, and its masterful engineering speak of a culture with a profound command of the physical world. But what other secrets did this lost world understand? What other forces of nature had they mastered? The monuments we have seen are a testament to a science of the solid and the massive. But now, our investigation turns to a different kind of power, a power that is subtle, invisible, and which we believe is a hallmark of our modern age. Our evidence is no longer a mountain of stone or a colossus of the desert. Instead, we must look to two far more humble clues. One is a simple clay pot, discovered in the sands of modern-day Iraq. The other, a cryptic carving hidden in the darkness of an Egyptian temple crypt. Separately, they are academic curiosities, but together they hint at the astonishing possibility that our ancestors harnessed the fundamental force of electricity thousands of years before its official discovery. Our first exhibit was found in 1936 during an excavation in a village near Baghdad. It is a small, unassuming object, a 5-inch tall terracotta jar, sealed at the top with a plug of bitumen, a kind of natural asphalt. Inside the jar, a cylinder of rolled copper was found, and suspended in the center of that copper cylinder, held in place by the bitumen plug but not touching the copper, was a slender iron rod. At first, it was catalogued as just another pot, its purpose unknown. The mainstream archaeological explanation is that it was likely a storage vessel for sacred texts. In this view, the papyrus or parchment scrolls were rolled up and placed inside the copper cylinder for protection before the whole container was sealed. Over the centuries, the organic scroll material would have completely decomposed, leaving behind only the enigmatic metal and clay components. It is a plausible explanation for a simple jar. But in 1938, the German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig, then director of the Iraq Museum, looked at the object and saw something else. He recognized that if you take a copper cylinder and an iron rod, place them in a jar, and add an electrolyte, a simple acidic liquid like grape juice or vinegar, both readily available in ancient Parthia, the resulting chemical reaction produces an electrical current. This simple clay pot was not just a pot, it was a perfect, fully functional blueprint for a galvanic cell, a battery. This wasn't just a theory.
In the years since Koenig's observation, numerous researchers and engineers have built exact replicas of the Baghdad battery, and every single time they work. They produce a steady, low-voltage current, typically between 0.5 and 1.5 volts. The object, dismissed as a scroll holder, functions perfectly as a power source. So the question is no longer, could it be a battery, but if it was a battery, what was it used for? Several compelling theories have been proposed. The most widely accepted is that it was used for electroplating or gilding. A small, continuous electrical current is ideal for applying a micro-thin layer of a precious metal like gold or silver onto a cheaper base metal like copper. And indeed, several supposedly gold artifacts from the region have been found that, upon closer inspection, appear to be silver objects with an unusually thin and durable layer of gold plating. Another possibility is a medical application. The gentle tingle produced by the batteries could have been used in an early form of electroacupuncture for pain relief, a sensation that would have seemed miraculous. Or perhaps the purpose was purely ritualistic. Imagine a priest using hidden batteries to electrify an idol, giving a small shock to any supplicant who touched it. Such a trick would have been a powerful demonstration of divine authority. Whatever its use, the Baghdad battery remains a tantalizing piece of evidence for a forgotten chapter in the history of science.
Why would a purely mythological scene contain so many distinct elements that map perfectly onto the components of a sophisticated electrical lighting device? And why is this relief found in a deep, subterranean crypt that is perpetually in total darkness? There are no windows, and crucially, archaeological analysis of the ceilings has found no trace of soot or smoke residue, which definitively rules out the use of torches or oil lamps. How then did the ancient artists see to carve these incredibly detailed reliefs in absolute pitch-black darkness? The carving itself seems to be answering the question, depicting the very technology that may have illuminated the chamber. The Baghdad battery and the Dendera light, two echoes of ancient power from two different cultures separated by 1,000 years. Are they just a series of incredible coincidences? A storage jar that happens to be a perfect battery? A creation myth that happens to look exactly like a giant light bulb? Or are we seeing two pieces of the same fragmented puzzle? One piece is a potential power source. The other is a potential large-scale application. Together, they suggest a lost science of electricity that was known and used in the ancient world. This knowledge adds another crucial layer to the portrait of the advanced predecessor civilization we have been tracing. Their legacy is not just one of impossible engineering and construction. Theirs was a culture of profound scientific understanding. They had the advanced mechanics to build an astronomical computer. They had the geological and astronomical knowledge to build monuments in alignment with the heavens and to withstand the test of deep time. And now, it seems, they may have had the physics to understand and harness the invisible force of electricity. The whispers of a lost electrical science are tantalizing, but because of the scant evidence, they remain on the fringes of accepted history. But what happens when a discovery is made that is so impossible, so profoundly out of place in time, that it cannot be dismissed and it cannot be ignored? What happens when archaeologists unearth a vast, complex cathedral of stone, built by simple hunter-gatherers 6,000 years before the pyramids? The next piece of evidence in our investigation is not a fringe theory. It is a shocking archaeological fact that has already forced us to change everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization. Chapter 7. Göbekli Tepe, the temple that rewrote time. Our investigation into a lost chapter of human history has followed a trail of tantalizing clues: a gear-driven computer from a shipwreck, impossible stonework in the Andes, 1,000-ton monoliths in Lebanon, a water-worn Sphinx, and whispers of a forgotten electrical science. These are profound anomalies, yet they largely remain on the fringes of accepted academic thought. But our journey now takes us to a place where the fringe became the mainstream, a place where a single discovery was so undeniable, so utterly revolutionary, that it didn't just challenge our history books, it forced us to tear them up and start again. We traveled to the rolling, sun-baked hills of southeastern Turkey, a region at the northern edge of the Fertile Crescent. For decades, a rounded hilltop known locally as Gobekli Tepe, or Potbelly Hill, was just another feature in the landscape. In the 1960s, surveyors noted broken slabs of limestone littering its surface, but dismissed it as the remains of a forgotten medieval cemetery. For 30 years, the greatest archaeological secret on Earth lay sleeping, undisturbed, just beneath the topsoil.
Then, in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt, who was re-examining old survey data, came to the hill. He had a hunch that it was more than it seemed. As he walked to the summit, he saw the tops of immense, T-shaped, carved megaliths jutting from the earth. Where others had seen simple headstones, Schmidt, with his deep knowledge of the prehistoric Stone Age, saw something else entirely. He recognized it instantly as the work of prehistoric people. In that moment, he knew he had found not a cemetery, but something infinitely older and infinitely more important. He knew, as he would later say, that he had two choices: either walk away and tell no one, or spend the rest of his life here. He chose to stay. To understand the earth-shattering importance of what Klaus Schmidt had found, we must first understand the story of human civilization as it was universally accepted before 1994. For over a century, the origin of civilization was not considered a mystery. It was a clear, linear, and logical progression, a theory known as the agricultural revolution. The story was simple. For hundreds of thousands of years, all humans lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers. They existed in small, mobile, egalitarian bands, following herds and gathering seasonal plants. They owned only what they could carry. They had no kings, no priests, no permanent homes, and no monumental architecture. They were, in the classical view, primitive. Then, around 10,000 years ago, somewhere here in the Fertile Crescent, a revolutionary breakthrough occurred: the invention of agriculture. humans learned to domesticate plants and animals. For the first time, they had a stable, reliable food source. This single invention, according to the theory, was the catalyst for everything we call civilization. Farming forced people to settle down in one place to tend their crops, leading to the first permanent villages. A surplus of food meant that not everyone had to be a farmer, allowing for the rise of specialized classes, artisans, soldiers, leaders, and most importantly, a priestly class who managed the surplus and organized society.
These villages grew into the first towns and then the first great cities. Only after all these developments, after agriculture, settlement, surplus, and social hierarchy, did humanity finally have the resources, the time, and the organization required for two final achievements: complex, organized religion and the construction of large-scale, monumental architecture. It was a neat, logical sequence: farming first, then villages, then cities, and only then temples. This was the unshakable foundation of our understanding of the past. And then Klaus Schmidt began to dig. What he and his team unearthed at Göbekli Tepe did not just add a new chapter to this story. It proved that the entire book was written in the wrong order. As the layers of earth were peeled back, it became clear that this was not a village. There were no domestic houses, no cooking hearths, no refuse pits, none of the signatures of a settlement. This was a place of ritual, a place of pilgrimage. It was, as Schmidt declared, the world's first temple. And what a temple it was. The team uncovered a series of immense circular enclosures. At the center of each of these circles stood two colossal T-shaped pillars of solid limestone. These central pillars tower up to 18 feet high and weigh an estimated 15 to 20 tons each. They are humanoid in form, with schematic arms carved along their sides, but their faces are blank, anonymous, and haunting. Encircling them were walls made of rough stone, into which were set smaller, though still massive, T-shaped pillars, all facing inward toward the central pair. The pillars were not crude blocks. They were canvases for a lost world of symbolism and art. They are covered with breathtaking, high-relief carvings of animals, not the prey animals one might expect from a hunter's cult, but a menacing menagerie of predators and scavengers, snarling foxes, powerful lions, venomous snakes and spiders, and graceful, long-legged birds. This was not primitive graffiti. This was a sophisticated, symbolic language carved in stone, a window into the mind and the mythology of our distant ancestors. But the true bombshell, the discovery that would send a shockwave through the world of archaeology, was its age. As the team excavated deeper, they found organic material, animal bones and charcoal from ancient fires, preserved in the fill that had been used to bury the enclosures. This material could be subjected to carbon dating. When the results came back, they were simply impossible. The oldest layers of Göbekli Tepe
were dated to approximately 9,600 BC. This means the site is almost 12,000 years old.
Let that number sink in. Gobekli Tepe is more than 6,000 years older than Stonehenge. It is 7,000 years older than the Great Pyramid of Giza. It was built at the very end of the last ice age, an era we had always considered to be a primitive Stone Age. It was constructed before the invention of pottery, before metallurgy, before the wheel, and before writing. And most critically, it was built by a people who, according to the established timeline, were supposed to be nothing more than simple nomadic hunter-gatherers. A discovery of this magnitude doesn't just change the details, it changes the entire plot. The existence of Gobekli Tepe is a fatal contradiction to the old model of civilization. Hunter-gatherers were not supposed to be capable of this. To quarry 20-ton pillars from a nearby limestone cliff, transport them over a mile without wheels or beasts of burden, and then erect them and cover them in sophisticated art requires a level of planning, coordination, and a shared vision that no one thought possible for a pre-agricultural society. It implies a complex social structure and a deeply held, organized religion. This forces us into a complete reversal of our most fundamental theories about our own past. Klaus Schmidt himself proposed the revolutionary new model that Gobekli Tepe demands. The old formula was, agriculture leads to settlement, which then allows for complex religion. The evidence of Gobekli Tepe shows that the formula was completely backward. The new formula is, complex religion came first. The overwhelming multi-generational compulsion to build this sacred cathedral on a hill was what brought disparate bands of hunter-gatherers together. This sacred place, this communal project, was the very thing that created a complex society. But a project of this scale required a large, stable workforce living nearby for extended periods of time. How do you feed hundreds of builders when your food supply is the unpredictable movement of wild game and the ripening of wild plants? You need a better, more reliable system. And it is here that Gobekli Tepe delivers its final revolutionary secret. It is located at the very heart of a small region that is the genetic origin point of the world's first domesticated einkorn wheat. The logistical necessity of feeding the population that built Gobekli Tepe was, Schmidt and others now believe, the very evolutionary pressure that sparked the invention of agriculture. Mankind did not stumble upon farming and then build temples. It seems we began to farm so that we could gather together and build temples. The birth of the gods, it seems, was the catalyst for the birth of civilization. Gobekli Tepe is the smoking gun. It is the undeniable, scientifically dated proof that a highly organized, artistically and symbolically sophisticated culture existed nearly 12,000 years ago. It provides, for the first time, a solid anchor point in time for the lost civilization our investigation has been seeking. This is no longer speculation.
And the site is even more complex than it first appears. Detailed analysis of the enclosures and pillars suggests a deep connection to the heavens. Many researchers, including author Graham Hancock, argue that Göbekli Tepe was, among other things, a sophisticated astronomical observatory. The central pillars of the main enclosures appear to be aligned to specific points on the horizon, tracking the rising of bright stars like Sirius. The animal carvings may not be merely symbolic, they may represent the constellations themselves. One pillar, known as Pillar 43 or the Vulture Stone, is argued to be a detailed star map and a date stamp, marking a catastrophic comet impact event that science knows occurred around 10,800 BC, which triggered the Younger Dryas climate cataclysm. And then there is the site's final mystery. Around 8000 BC, after nearly 2 millennia of use, the creators of Göbekli Tepe did something extraordinary. They deliberately and painstakingly buried their entire magnificent temple complex. Over centuries, they filled in every enclosure with millions of cubic feet of earth, rubble, and animal bones, creating the artificial Potbelly Hill that so perfectly preserved their world for us to find. Why would a culture intentionally entomb its most sacred creation? Was it a ritual act, a burial for a dead religion? Or was it an act of preservation, a time capsule designed to protect the site and its knowledge from a coming dark age, and to be found by a future humanity? Göbekli Tepe is more than just the world's oldest temple. It is an archaeological fact that proves the simple linear story of human progress we have been telling ourselves is wrong. It opens a window into a lost world at the very dawn of our own era, revealing a culture far more ancient, complex, and knowledgeable than we ever dared to imagine. The people of Göbekli Tepe deliberately entombed their world, creating a time capsule on a hill that has now rewritten our history. But this raises a crucial question. What of other great works from this same lost epoch? What happened to the sacred sites of the coastal peoples from that same time, a time when the great ice sheets of the Ice Age were melting? As the glaciers retreated, the sea levels rose by nearly 400 feet. Entire coastlines and anything that had been built upon them were swallowed by the waves. Our search for the legacy of this lost world must therefore take us from the land and into the deep. Chapter 8. The Sunken World of Yonaguni. The deliberate, careful burial of Göbekli Tepe preserved its 12,000-year-old secrets, creating a time capsule that has fundamentally rewritten the dawn of civilization on land. But its discovery raises a profound question. If a culture this sophisticated existed on a high, dry hilltop, what became of their contemporaries who lived along the coasts? At the end of the last ice age, as the world's great glaciers melted, the sea level rose by nearly 400 feet. Entire coastlines and anything that had been built upon them were swallowed by the waves. Our search for the legacy of this lost world must therefore take us from the land and into the deep.
Our destination is the remote, typhoon-battered island of Yonaguni, the southernmost inhabited point of Japan. It is a place of rugged cliffs and powerful currents. And it was here, in 1986, that a local dive tour operator named Kiyachiro Aratake was scouting for new locations to observe hammerhead sharks. As he descended into the clear blue water off the island's southern shore, he made a discovery that would spark one of the most intense debates in modern archaeology. There, rising from the seabed before him, was something impossible. A colossal, monolithic structure of terraces, platforms, and sheer vertical walls. It looked, for all the world, like a vast sunken pyramid. What Aratake had found is now known as the Yonaguni Monument. It is a single, immense block of sandstone, longer than a football field, and as tall as an 8-story building. Its main feature is a massive rectangular terrace from which descend what appear to be enormous tiered steps. The structure has sheer, flat faces, sharp, defined edges, and an architectural complexity that seems utterly alien to the natural seabed. Aratake was convinced he had found a lost city, a monument from a forgotten Pacific civilization, drowned by the sea in a forgotten age. Almost immediately, the academic and geological communities offered a sober, scientific explanation. The official, mainstream view is that the Yonaguni Monument, despite its startlingly artificial appearance, is a completely natural geological formation. There is no lost city, no sunken pyramid. There is only an unusual and impressive example of sedimentary geology and erosion.
The science behind this position is sound. The monument is composed of sandstone from the Yaimaya group, which is famous for its parallel, well-defined bedding planes. This type of rock is predisposed to fracture along straight, clean lines when subjected to tectonic stress from earthquakes, which are common in the region. According to the geological explanation, the large, flat terraces are simply exposed bedding planes. The sheer vertical walls are the result of the rock mass splitting along natural fault lines. The features that look like steps are just smaller horizontal fractures in the stone. In this view, the ocean itself has acted as the final sculptor. Thousands of years of powerful currents sweeping across the rock would have washed away loose debris and further eroded the straight fractures, enhancing their artificial appearance. Prominent geologists, including Dr. Robert Schoch, who argued for the great antiquity of the Sphinx, have studied the monument and concluded that its features, while remarkable, are ultimately consistent with these known natural processes. It is not an artifact, but a geofact, a natural object that mimics the appearance of a man-made one. It is, in the eyes of mainstream science, a magnificent but purely natural wonder. But for those who have dived the site, and for a growing number of researchers, the purely natural explanation feels entirely insufficient. It is one thing to explain away a single right angle or a single straight line. It is another thing entirely to explain the sheer density and coherence of so many seemingly architectural features in one self-contained structure. The challenge to the mainstream view has been led for decades by Professor Masaaki Kimura, a respected marine geologist from Japan's University of the Ryukyus. After more than 100 dives, logging and mapping the site, Kimura is convinced that it is, at the very least, a natural structure that has been extensively modified by human hands. Kimura and his team have identified a host of features that they argue defy a purely natural explanation. While nature can produce straight lines, can it produce a series of giant steps, each about a meter high, that are as uniform and rhythmically spaced as a grand staircase? While tectonic activity can fracture rock, can it create what appears to be a paved road, complete with drainage channels that encircles the entire monument?
Furthermore, there is the issue of debris. If the terraces and steps were formed by huge blocks of stone naturally breaking and falling away, then there should be a massive pile of that rubble at the base of the monument. But the area is remarkably clean, as if the debris was intentionally cleared away. Kimura's team has also identified what they believe are post holes carved into the rock, which may have once held timber supports, and distinct carvings that look like animals, including one formation that bears an uncanny resemblance to a giant sea turtle. Perhaps most controversially, they claim to have found wedge marks and chisel marks in the stone, direct physical evidence that the rock was not just fractured, but quarried and shaped. The argument is simple. While any one of these features might occur in nature by chance, the probability of all of them occurring together in one logical architectural arrangement is infinitesimally small. It doesn't look like a random jumble of fractures. It looks designed. This leads to the extraordinary alternative theory that the Yonaguni monument is the work of an unknown prehistoric culture. It is either a completely artificial structure, a terraced pyramid carved from the living bedrock, or it is a terraformed site where humans took a large natural formation and reshaped it into a grand ceremonial center. Its purpose may have been religious, a place of ritual and worship, or it may have been astronomical, a platform for observing the heavens, or it may have been the castle of a powerful king from a lost maritime empire. Its exact function is a mystery, but its origin, in this view, is not. It is a relic of a lost world. But if it is man-made, then the most important question is when. The monument today sits between 60 and 100 feet beneath the surface of the ocean. For humans to have worked on it, it must have been above sea level. We know from paleoclimatology and sea level records that this specific location was last exposed on dry land at the very end of the last ice age. As the great glaciers melted, the sea levels rose and submerged this coastline no later than 8000 BC, which is 10,000 years ago. This date is a stunning convergence. It aligns perfectly with the timeline of Gobekli Tepe. We now have two independent lines of evidence from opposite ends of Asia, pointing to the existence of a sophisticated, monument-building culture between 10 and 12,000 years ago. One was a temple on a hill, the other a temple by the sea. This is no longer a localized anomaly. It is the fingerprint of a global phenomenon. And it is here that we must consider the ancient legends of the Pacific, the stories of a great lost motherland civilization that was destroyed in a cataclysmic flood. These legends, passed down in different cultures, speak of a sunken world known as Mu, or Lemuria. For centuries, these have been dismissed as mere fantasy. But a 10,000-year-old man-made structure, drowned by the rising seas at the end of the Ice Age, provides for the very first time a tangible, physical anchor for these ancient myths.
the sunken world of Yonaguni could be the first real remnant of the world of Mu. The Yonaguni monument leaves us with a stark choice. Do we accept the explanation of a remarkable but ultimately random trick of geology? Or do we accept the far more profound possibility that we are looking at a city from a lost world, a civilization that flourished and fell before the dawn of our known history? The debate rages on, in large part because the evidence is so difficult to access, obscured by the waters that claimed it. But what if this same exact argument, the razor-thin line that separates a natural hill from an artificial pyramid, was not confined to the bottom of the ocean? What if it is happening right now on dry land, in the heart of Europe, with structures so enormous and so controversial they could rewrite the history of an entire continent and perhaps the entire world? Chapter 9: The Bosnian Valley of Giants.
A flatiron is a common geological feature, a triangular-shaped hillside formed when layers of sedimentary rock are tilted upwards by tectonic forces and then eroded away by wind and water. The Visoko Valley, geologically speaking, is a prime location for their formation. Geologists argue that the pyramid-like shape is a complete coincidence of natural erosion, and that the entire project is a case of misinterpreting natural geology. The European Association of Archaeologists, along with numerous other academic bodies, issued a formal denunciation of the project, calling it a cruel hoax on an unsuspecting public, and expressing deep concern that the excavations were damaging legitimate medieval and Roman ruins on the hillsides. From the perspective of orthodox science, the claims made about the site are not just wrong, they are a form of pseudo-archaeology. The so-called paved terraces are simply fractured layers of natural conglomerate rock. The claims of ancient superconcrete have been refuted by independent analysis. The cardinal alignment is said to be approximate at best and coincidental. In the eyes of the establishment, there is no mystery in the Bosnian Valley. There are only hills. But for Dr. Osmanagic, the thousands of volunteers who flock to Visoko every year, and a growing number of independent researchers, the story is not nearly so simple. They argue that the mainstream has condemned the project from a distance without ever engaging with the physical evidence that has been uncovered on the ground. And that evidence, they claim, is extensive and compelling. The first argument is one of pure geometry and alignment. While they are now covered in soil and vegetation, the underlying structures of the Pyramid of the Sun and the nearby Pyramid of the Moon are said to possess a geometric regularity that defies nature. Thermal imaging has allegedly shown that the slopes of the pyramids cool faster at night than surrounding natural hills, suggesting they are hollow or less dense, as an artificial structure might be. And crucially, the three largest pyramids, Sun, Moon, and Dragon, are claimed to form a near-perfect equilateral triangle, with their faces aligned to the cardinal directions with a precision that seems intentional. To prove the hills are artificial, the Foundation has conducted extensive excavations. On the Pyramid of the Sun, these digs have uncovered what appear to be large paved blocks. Osmanagic's team claims that analysis of these blocks
conducted at several Bosnian and Italian institutes, shows that they are not a natural conglomerate, but a form of man-made concrete cast in place. They claim this ancient concrete is geopolymeric and has a hardness and water resistance superior to anything we can produce today. Perhaps the most intriguing part of the mystery lies several kilometers away in a network of underground tunnels known as ravne. First thought to be a natural cave, the Foundation has now excavated several kilometers of a complex intersecting tunnel network. They believe it once was the entranceway to the pyramid complex. The tunnels are filled with drywall material, suggesting they were deliberately backfilled in antiquity. Deep inside, the air is said to be remarkably clean, with an unusually high concentration of beneficial negative ions and a complete absence of harmful cosmic and geological radiation. And within these tunnels, the team has discovered large, enigmatic ceramic sculptures or megaliths weighing several tons each. Some of these, like the megalith K2, have what appear to be ancient characters carved on their surface, a form of runic writing that has yet to be deciphered. The most extraordinary claim of all is that an electromagnetic energy beam with a frequency of 28 kilohertz and a radius of several meters emanates from the very peak of the Pyramid of the Sun. This phenomenon, measured by independent physicists and engineers working with the Foundation, has led to the central theory of what this complex truly is. The alternative theory, the entire premise of the Bosnian Pyramid project, is that we are looking at the work of a highly advanced pre-Ice Age civilization in Europe. Based on radiocarbon dating of organic material found beneath the concrete layers on the Pyramid of the Sun, Osmanagic claims the structures are over 30,000 years old. This would make them, by a staggering margin, the oldest and largest pyramids on the planet, predating the Egyptian pyramids by more than 25,000 years. And according to this theory, their purpose was not as tombs for kings. They were, in essence, colossal energy machines. The pyramid shape, the internal chambers, the underground tunnels, and the specific materials used were all designed to harness and amplify natural, telluric, and cosmic energies. The complex was built, according to its proponents, to function as a massive device for healing, rejuvenation, and spiritual growth, with the tunnels acting as a vital part of a system that created a perfect environment for the human body. It was, in their view, a place of power. If the claims made about the Bosnian pyramids are even partially true, they are a game changer of unprecedented proportions. They would provide definitive proof of a major, organized, and technologically sophisticated civilization in the heart of Europe during the depths of the last ice age. This lost culture would not just have been capable of monumental construction, but would have possessed a deep understanding of energy, frequency, and physics that is far beyond anything we associate with the ancient world. It would add another enormous piece to the puzzle of a global predecessor civilization, and suggest their technological capabilities were not limited to just stone and mechanics. And so the Bosnian Valley of Giants remains an active battleground. It is a place of fierce debate, pitting the near-unanimous consensus of mainstream science against a passionate and growing movement of alternative researchers. Is it the greatest archaeological discovery in human history? A rediscovery of a lost science of healing and power? Or is it the world's largest hoax? A tragic case of misinterpreting natural hills and exploiting a nation's desire for a grander history? The answer, it seems, is still buried under a mountain of earth and a mountain of controversy. This debate often centers on enigmatic symbols found deep within the Ravne tunnels, alleged inscriptions from a forgotten people. But what if evidence for a lost high technology wasn't hidden in a dark tunnel, waiting to be deciphered? What if it was carved in plain sight on the sun-drenched wall of a sacred Egyptian temple, depicting objects that simply should not have existed in the ancient world?
Chapter 10. Hieroglyphs of the Impossible. The Bosnian Valley leaves us suspended between two irreconcilable realities, a grand hoax or the greatest discovery in human history. The debate is a modern one, centered on inscriptions and energy readings that are fiercely contested. But what if evidence for a lost high technology was not hidden in a controversial tunnel or buried under a mountain of earth? What if it was carved in plain sight, 3,000 years ago, high on a temple beam in the most sacred city of ancient Egypt? Our journey takes us back to the banks of the Nile, to the ancient city of Abydos. For millennia, Abydos was the most revered pilgrimage site in Egypt, the mythical burial place of the god Osiris. Here, the great pharaoh Seti I built one of the most magnificent and beautifully preserved temples in the entire country. Its walls are a library of stone, covered in exquisite low-relief carvings that are considered the zenith of New Kingdom art. It is a place of sublime beauty and orthodox history. But high up in the temple's cavernous hypostyle hall, on a massive limestone ceiling support, is a single panel of hieroglyphs that breaks all the rules. To the thousands of tourists who pass beneath it every day, it is largely invisible. But for those who know where to look, it contains a series of images so anomalous, so out of place, that they have become one of the most enduring and controversial puzzles in all of Egyptology. Because carved into this 3,000-year-old stone is what appears to be a modern attack helicopter, a submarine, and a futuristic aircraft. The images are unmistakable and deeply unsettling to our understanding of the past. The helicopter is the most famous, possessing a clear cockpit, a defined tail, and a main rotor on top. Beside it is a shape that bears an uncanny resemblance to a labeled submarine or airship, complete with a conning tower. Below them are two other shapes, one looking like a sleek, high-speed jet or glider, the other like a flying saucer or hovercraft. The immediate instinctive reaction is one of disbelief. How could this be? The mainstream Egyptological community has a very specific and ingenious explanation for these bizarre images. They are, in the official view, not a single coherent scene, but a complete accident. The phenomenon is known as a palimpsest. The story is this. The beam was originally carved with the official royal names and titles of the temple's builder, Pharaoh Seti I. When Seti died, his son and successor, Ramesses II, took over the completion of the temple. As was common practice, Ramesses ordered his own titulary to be carved over his father's.
But instead of chiseling away the old glyphs, the artisans took a shortcut. They simply filled Seti's deep-cut hieroglyphs with plaster, smoothed the surface, and then carved Ramesses' new titles into the plaster layer. For 3,000 years, the beam showed only the titles of Ramesses the Great. But over time, sections of this ancient plaster have weathered and fallen away. What we see today, according to the theory, is a jumbled, accidental overlap of the two different inscriptions. Portions of Ramesses' newer glyphs are visible, alongside portions of Seti's older underlying glyphs. According to this explanation, the helicopter is a purely coincidental composite image, formed by the overlapping of two separate hieroglyphs, one that meant "who repulses the 9 bows," a title of Ramesses II, and an older one underneath it that was a part of Seti I's title, "who protects Egypt and overthrows foreign countries." The combination of a bow symbol, an arm symbol, and other shapes accidentally formed the helicopter. It is a clever, tidy explanation that seeks to resolve an uncomfortable anomaly within the known confines of history.
The palimpsest theory is elegant, and it is the accepted explanation for a reason. It uses known Egyptian practices to explain away the impossible. And yet, the closer one looks, the more this tidy explanation begins to unravel. The first and most significant problem is one of simple probability and coherence. What are the statistical odds that a random, accidental flaking of plaster over two jumbled texts would create not just one, but a series of clear and distinct images of modern vehicles? The helicopter is not a vague ink blot shape. To the human eye, it is a highly coherent image with multiple correct components: a chassis, a tailboom, and a rotor system. The submarine is similarly well defined. For this to be an accident is an event of such staggering improbability that it strains credulity. Furthermore, if this were a simple palimpsest, we would expect to see a chaotic jumble of partial lines and symbols all over the beam, but instead, these specific forms appear almost as if they were intentionally composed. The edges are clear, the forms are self-contained. They look less like an accident and more like a deliberate pictograph. While palimpsests are known in other Egyptian temples, none have ever produced anything remotely as recognizable or anachronistic as the fleet of vehicles at Abydos. Why did this one specific accident on this one specific beam create this one specific set of impossible images? The palimpsest theory, while plausible on the surface, can also be seen as an ad hoc hypothesis, an explanation created specifically to neutralize a piece of evidence that is profoundly challenging to the established historical paradigm. It asks us to believe in a coincidence of almost miraculous proportions rather than to confront what the images so clearly appear to show. This leads us to the alternative theory, one that takes the images at face value. This theory posits that these are not accidents at all. They are accurate representations of real physical objects that were witnessed by the Egyptian temple scribes. They are not a glimpse into the future, but a record of a technology that existed in their distant past. In this view, the carvers were doing what artists have always done. They were depicting their world. And their world, or at least the world of their gods and ancestors, included these incredible flying and submersible machines. Lacking the technical vocabulary to describe them, they simply carved what they saw, incorporating these skyboats and metal fish into their most sacred texts as powerful symbols of divinity and kingship.
the hieroglyphs are not a jumbled mistake. They are an eyewitness account of a lost high technology. If this theory is correct, then the hieroglyphs of Abydos become a stunning piece of corroborating evidence in our investigation. We have already seen the legacy of a lost civilization in their immense engineering projects, their astronomical knowledge, and their potential mastery of energy. But a civilization this advanced would surely not have been bound to the ground. A global culture would require a means of advanced transportation. The Abydos glyphs could be that missing link. They could be the visual record that proves the builders of Baalbek and the astronomers of Göbekli Tepe also possessed the power of flight. These images give a tangible, mechanical form to the technological prowess we have been tracing. They suggest that the power of this lost civilization was not just monumental, but mobile. They put a face, or rather a fuselage, on the science of a forgotten world.
The hieroglyphs of Abydos leave us with an enigma carved in stone. Are we looking at a remarkable coincidence? A 1 in a billion trick of decaying plaster and overlapping symbols? An accident that just so happens to perfectly mirror the machines of our own time? Or are we looking at a 3,000-year-old message, a clear and unambiguous depiction of technologies that, according to our history books, should not exist? The answer forces us to question what the ancients truly saw and what they truly knew. The glyphs hint at a lost world of flight and exploration, a world of technological marvels. But our investigation has so far focused on the works of this lost civilization, their temples, their machines, their knowledge. We have not yet asked the most fundamental question of all. Who were they? What if there are artifacts that challenge not just our history of technology, but the very story of humanity itself? Chapter 11. Stones of a Forgotten Humanity. The hieroglyphs of Abydos leave us staring at a profound technological mystery, a message in stone that seems to depict machines from our future in the context of our distant past. The evidence we have examined on our journey has consistently challenged the established timelines of engineering, astronomy, and science. But we have, until now, avoided the most fundamental and controversial question of all. We have investigated the works of a lost civilization, but we have not questioned the identity of the builders themselves. We have assumed they were people like us, our direct and recent ancestors. But what if the official story of humanity itself is the most flawed part of the narrative? What if the timeline of our own evolution, so carefully constructed by modern science, is missing its most important chapters? Our investigation now enters its final and most forbidden territory. We will examine a trail of evidence, etched in stone and fossilized in rock, that suggests the story of humanity is far older, far more complex, and far more mysterious than we have ever been told. This is a journey to confront the possibility of a forgotten humanity, a species with a past so deep it has been lost to the sands of time. The story of our origins, as told by mainstream science, is one of a slow, gradual ascent. It begins in the aftermath of the Great Extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. In this new world, our distant mammalian ancestors were small, shrew-like creatures, scurrying in the shadows. Over tens of millions of years, primates evolved, leading to the rise of the hominids in Africa. We have traced this lineage through the fossil record, from early bipedal apes like Lucy
the Australopithecus, who lived over 3 million years ago, to the first toolmakers of the Homo genus. The timeline is clear. Homo habilis emerged around 2.5 million years ago, followed by the Great Wanderer, Homo erectus. Finally, after a long and complex evolutionary journey, our own species, anatomically modern Homo sapiens, appeared on the world stage in Africa a mere 300,000 years ago. This is the bedrock of modern paleoanthropology. There is, according to this model, an unbridgeable 65 million-year chasm separating the last of the great dinosaurs from the first of our kind. Any artifact, any fossil, any footprint that suggests these two existed at the same time is by definition an impossibility. It is not an anomaly. It is a mistake, a misinterpretation, or a fraud. And yet, for over a century, such impossible artifacts have been found. They are often dismissed, ignored, and relegated to the basements of museums or the shadowy world of private collections. They form a body of evidence known to some as forbidden archaeology. And nowhere is this evidence more shocking than in the strange case of the Ica stones of Peru. Beginning in the 1960s, thousands of strange engraved stones began to surface from the arid region of Ica, Peru. They are andesite river stones, darkened by a natural patina and covered in intricate carvings. The collection was made famous by a local physician, Dr. Javier Cabrera, who, over several decades, amassed a personal museum of over 11,000 of these stones. What they depict is nothing short of world-shattering. The stones show what appeared to be ancient people coexisting with a variety of dinosaur species. We see men riding triceratops, battling stegosaurs, and flying on the backs of pterosaurs. But the scenes go far beyond just dinosaurs. Other stones depict what appears to be advanced medical knowledge, including detailed open-heart surgery, organ transplants, and cesarean sections. Others show figures using telescopes to gaze at the stars, and even what appeared to be maps of the Earth as it was in a forgotten geological age, showing lost continents. The Ica stones, if genuine, are a complete library of a lost world, a civilization with a bizarre and impossible mix of ancient and futuristic knowledge. The mainstream archaeological response is unequivocal. The stones are fakes. They are modern forgeries created by local farmers to sell to tourists. This view is supported by the 1970s confession of a local farmer named Basilio Ushuaia, who claimed he and his wife carved all the stones themselves, using dental drills and baking them in dung fires to create an aged appearance. For the academic world, the case was closed. But the mystery is not so simple. Ushuaia later recanted his confession, claiming he only made it to avoid being imprisoned for selling national artifacts. More importantly, the sheer number of stones, estimated to be over 50,000 in total, seems far beyond the lifetime capacity of a single family of farmers. And while many are undoubtedly crude modern copies, some of the older stones in Cabrera's collection show a level of anatomical and scientific detail that seems to require a deep, pre-existing knowledge base. Are all 50,000 stones modern fakes? Or did the local farmers simply discover an ancient cache of genuine artifacts and then begin making their own crude copies for a booming tourist trade? The evidence for an impossibly ancient humanity is not just pictorial. It is also, quite literally, set in stone. In the bed of the Paluxy River in Glen Rose, Texas, lies a geological formation from the Cretaceous period, over 100 million years old. Embedded in this rock are some of the clearest three-toed dinosaur tracks ever found. But beginning in the 1930s, locals discovered something else in the same rock layer. Winding among the dinosaur tracks, and sometimes even intersecting them, were what appeared to be perfectly formed, anatomically modern human footprints. The discovery ignited a firestorm of controversy. For decades, the site has been a battleground between mainstream paleontologists and creationist researchers. The scientific consensus is
that the human tracks are all misinterpretations. They are either elongated dinosaur tracks, where the creature's entire foot and metatarsal bones sank into soft mud, or they are simply erosional features in the rock that coincidentally resemble footprints. Some have even been proven to be outright carvings from the Great Depression era. And yet, some of the tracks continue to defy this easy explanation. Researchers who have defended their authenticity point to features consistent with genuine human footprints, like mud upwelling around the edges and clear impressions of a human-like arch and ball of the foot. The stride length is consistent and natural. While the evidence is highly contentious and marred by a history of fraud, the Paluxy riverbed remains a stubborn anomaly, a place where the footprints of man and monster seem to be impossibly intertwined in the bedrock of deep time. If we are to entertain the possibility that even a fraction of this evidence is genuine, it forces us to consider a radical new history of our own species. This alternative theory, most famously articulated by researcher Michael Cremo, suggests that anatomically modern humans did not arrive on the scene a mere 300,000 years ago. It posits that our species is ancient, having existed on this planet for millions, perhaps even tens of millions of years, coexisting with creatures known only through the fossil record. This does not necessarily invalidate the theory of evolution, but it suggests that our own human lineage is far older and more complex than we know. It opens the door to a concept that is central to many ancient mythologies, the idea of cycles of time. In this view, humanity has not had one single linear path of progress. Instead, our history is a series of immense cycles of rise and fall. Civilizations have risen to heights of incredible technological and spiritual sophistication, only to be wiped out by geological cataclysms or their own hubris, forcing the survivors back into a primitive state to begin the long climb all over again. This vast, cyclical timeline for humanity is the final piece of our puzzle. It provides the grand historical canvas that can contain all of the other mysteries we have investigated. The 12,000-year-old temple of Gobekli Tepe is no longer the dawn of civilization. It is simply the dawn of our current cycle, the first great work of the survivors of a previous age. The builders of the impossible cities in the Andes and the megalithic platforms of Lebanon were not our primitive ancestors. They were the heirs of a forgotten science from a previous golden age. The sophisticated knowledge encoded in the Antikythera mechanism, the potential mastery of electricity hinted at in Egypt, the advanced vehicles carved on the walls of Abydos, these are no longer anomalies. They are the scattered, haunting remnants of a previous humanity's great achievements. This reframes the entire human experience. We are not a species that has steadily progressed from caves to skyscrapers. We are a species with a profound amnesia, living amongst the ruins of our own forgotten pasts, forever striving to remember who we once were. These stones and footprints present us with the final and most personal mystery of our journey. They suggest that the story of who we are,
where we came from, and how long we have been here is fundamentally wrong. They force us to ask the most uncomfortable question of all. Do we truly know ourselves? We have journeyed from impossible machines to sunken cities, from giant pyramids to temples at the dawn of time, and now to the very heart of our own forgotten ancestry. We have followed a trail of forbidden clues across the globe, each one a crack in the edifice of our official history. What does it all mean? What is the final message encoded in these scattered clues from a past we barely know? Final chapter. Conclusion. A past we barely know. We began this journey by examining the small cracks in the smooth facade of our official history. We ended by confronting a chasm so vast it threatens to swallow our entire understanding of the human story. We have followed a trail of forbidden clues across the globe, from the familiar sands of Egypt to the impossible highlands of the Andes, from the depths of the sea to the dawn of time itself. We have stood in awe before the impossible gears of the Antikythera mechanism, a computer from an age of myth. We have been humbled by the machine-like precision of Puma Punku and the incomprehensible 1,000-ton monoliths of Baalbek. We have looked into the ancient, water-worn eyes of the Sphinx and seen a history far older than the pharaohs. We have found echoes of a lost electrical science on a temple wall, and we have touched the stones of Gobekli Tepe, a cathedral built by hunter-gatherers that single-handedly rewrote the story of civilization. We have sailed over the sunken world of Yonaguni, debated the giant pyramids of Bosnia, decoded impossible hieroglyphs at Abydos, and finally, we have confronted evidence that suggests our own human family is far more ancient than we were ever told. Each of these discoveries, when viewed alone, is an anomaly, an irritating puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit. In isolation, they can be explained away. A geologist can dismiss a stonework mystery. An archaeologist can debunk an artifact. A historian can attribute a legend to mere fancy. The official narrative is resilient, capable of absorbing or deflecting individual challenges. But we have not looked at them in isolation. We have gathered these scattered threads from across the globe and across the millennia. And when woven together, they no longer form a series of isolated anomalies. They create a single, coherent tapestry, a tapestry that depicts a world profoundly different from the one in our history books. The pattern is too strong, too consistent, and too widespread to be the result of mere coincidence. To dismiss every single one of these clues requires a leap of faith far greater than accepting the incredible story they tell. That story is the ghost of a world that came before our own. It is the story of a highly advanced, globally distributed human civilization that flourished in a forgotten epoch, deep in the mists of the last ice age. They were not aliens, they were not gods. They were people, a branch of the human family that achieved a profound level of scientific and spiritual sophistication. They were master astronomers, engineers, and geologists. They understood the fundamental forces of the planet, the cycles of the cosmos, and perhaps even the nature of consciousness itself. And when they knew their time was coming to an end, they left a message for the future. Not in fragile books or transient data, but in the most enduring medium they knew, colossal, impossibly built stone. They left their fingerprints scattered across the globe for a future cycle of humanity to find, a legacy designed to survive the long night of planetary cataclysm and cultural amnesia. This leaves us, the children of the current cycle, with the most magnificent and humbling questions a species can ask of itself.
Who were they? What was the fabric of their society? What did they value? Did they build cities of stone and light? And did they understand the universe in ways we are only just beginning to rediscover? We are like archaeologists of a distant future, sifting through the digital ruins of our own age, finding a single microchip and trying to reconstruct our entire world from it. We see the hardware of their civilization, but its software, its culture, its wisdom, its story is almost entirely lost to us. The final and most sobering message of this lost civilization is the simple fact that it is lost. If a culture so powerful, so knowledgeable, and so widespread could be brought to its knees and almost completely erased from human memory, what does that say about the permanence of our own? We build our towers of steel and glass. We fill our libraries with digital knowledge. We send our own hopeful messages into the cosmos, all with the quiet assumption that our legacy is indestructible. But the past is not just a lesson. It may also be a prophecy. The ultimate mystery is not what happened to them, but what their story tells us about ourselves. We are a species with amnesia, living on a planet that holds the secrets of our own forgotten youth. And we